All right, today we're jumping into one of the most incredible transformations of the 20th century. We're talking about how Brazil went from being a mostly rural country to an urban powerhouse, seemingly overnight. And this isn't just a story about buildings and concrete, It's about a massive movement of people, of money, a revolution, really, that completely reshaped a continent.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The first thing you have to understand is that Brazil's urbanization, well, it wasn't some slow, steady, planned-out thing. No way. It was an explosion. It was accelerated and, frankly, disorderly. Just a massive, chaotic shift of millions of people, all because of this economic earthquake that just turned the entire country on its head.
So how do we make sense of this whole story? Well, it's pretty simple. You just follow the money. This entire transformation breaks down beautifully into 3 different phases of capitalism, and each one left its own unique fingerprint on Brazil's cities. We're going to start with the commercial era, then dive into that huge industrial explosion, and finish up with the globalized financial era that we're living in today. So let's start at the beginning, way back in the colonial period. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the things they called cities in Brazil weren't really cities at all, not in the way we think of them. They were basically just glorified ports, and they existed for one reason, and one reason only.
You see, growth was incredibly slow. Snail's pace. And it was pretty much all happening right there on the coastline. Places like Salvador and Rio de Janeiro, they weren't built for the people living there. They were basically just commercial funnels, designed to ship all the sugar, gold, and other resources back to Europe. There wasn't a strong market inside Brazil itself, so there was just no real reason for these cities to grow.
Okay, now let's fast forward to the great turning point, the 20th century. And this is where everything changes. Those slow, sleepy coastal towns, they're about to give way to something totally new, the loud, sprawling, modern Brazilian metropolis. This really captures that shift perfectly, doesn't it? You go from that slow, coastal, trade-focused city to this accelerated, metropolitan city. And the new engine driving it all? Industry. An engine that was absolutely hungry for a massive workforce. So what was the spark? You can really point to one key moment, the 1930s. This is when the Vargas government basically flips a switch and launches this huge, state-led push for industrialization. And that one political decision? It lit the fuse on an urban bomb. But where did all the people come from to fill these brand new factories and cities?
Well, it actually started out in the countryside with something called the Green Revolution. Now, on the surface, that sounds great, right? New technology, mechanization, it all made farms way more productive. But here's the catch. For millions and millions of farm workers, those new tractors and harvesters meant that their jobs, they just disappeared. And this push from the countryside kicked off one of the largest internal migrations in modern history. It's called the Éxodo Rural, or the Rural Exodus. You had millions of people with no work, no future in farming, who packed up everything they had and headed for the cities, all chasing the promise of a new life in industry.
You can really trace the whole chain reaction here in 4 steps. First, mechanization pushes workers off the land. Second, they flood into the cities in that mass rural exodus. But third, and this is key, the cities were totally unprepared for this wave of people, which led to chaotic, disorderly growth. And the result? Step 4, this deep social and spatial segregation, which created the favelas and the huge peripheries that define so many Brazilian cities to this day.
So you see, while the countryside was pushing people out, the city was this incredibly powerful magnet pulling them in. It became, as the quote says, the main stage of national life, attracting labor for its new industries. That factory whistle was like a siren call for an entire generation. And now we come to our final phase, which really gets going around the 1970s. The whole logic of how cities grow is about to change one more time, and this time it's being driven by these massive global forces. And here's where the story takes a really fascinating twist. That explosive, hyper-concentrated growth in the megacities, like Sao Paulo and Rio, it actually starts to slow down a bit. It's a phenomenon they call metropolitan deconcentration. But don't get me wrong, the growth doesn't stop, it just changes direction. So the new engine is global finance. You've got multinational corporations and the whole financialization of the economy starting to call the shots on where the investment goes. And this starts pushing development outwards, fueling the growth of medium-sized cities and driving industry and services deeper and deeper into the country's interior. So after this whirlwind tour through all this history, what's the actual legacy of this process?
on the Brazil that we see today. How do all these different phases connect to what it's like to live in a Brazilian city right now? So what's the big takeaway from all this? If you're going to remember 3 things, let it be these. First, just the incredible, mind-blowing speed of the change. Second, the deep inequality and segregation that got baked into the system because of that rapid, unplanned growth. And third, the one constant through it all, capital. Whether it was commercial, industrial, or financial, money has always been the chief architect of Brazil's cities. We've seen how these huge economic forces have shaped the past and the present of Brazil's cities. And that leaves us with one last, pretty big question. As global capital keeps changing and evolving, how is it going to shape the cities of tomorrow? What do you think comes next?